Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. $173,000 a year. That is the income that Vanguard says you need to have in order to have a comfortable retirement. This comes from the recently published Vanguard Retirement Outlook Report. It aims to assess America's readiness when it comes to retirement. And it's worth noting that a household income of $173,000 puts you in the top 84th percentile of all households. So needless to say, the vast majority of us better brace ourselves for a rocky retirement. I will put a link to the report down below in the description box if you're interested in looking it over. Is it really true that unless you're a top tier earner, you're not going to be able to retire? Well, let's see how they came to this conclusion. We have to start with the question, how much money do you need to retire? And that really is the eternal question that we're all trying to answer in the personal finance space, right? And if you're a longtime follower of this channel, you know what I'm about to say. It depends on your personal circumstances because finance is personal. And as Vanguard points out in this report, there are two predominant ways you can answer this question, which they label as prescriptive or descriptive. Prescriptive measures are forward-looking based on your current circumstances. The financial advice industry, whether through online calculators or financial advisors, will often ask workers what standard of living, expressed as a share of pre-retirement income, they want to maintain during retirement. These prescriptive estimates are widely used in the financial services industry and range between 70% and 85% of pre-retirement income. Basically, the prescriptive measures are a way of saying I'd more or less like to continue living my same lifestyle today in retirement. I'll just simply cut back on those work-related expenses, but other than that, I'll spend roughly the same. However, as with most things in finance, we can't simply make a blanket statement that says once everyone gets to retirement, they'll spend 70% of their pre-retirement income. Yes, we do notice that retirees do tend to spend less than they did during their working years, but how much less really depends on what their income was. And this is where descriptive analysis comes into play, and this is what we see among current retirees. Descriptive estimates of retirement income needs are based on what retirees spend, treating observable reality as a measure of adequacy. Prescriptive analysis is kind of looking at what we think will happen in our circumstance, whereas descriptive is what we actually see happening among current retirees. Both are useful data points, and Vanguard actually looks at both of them using a hybrid approach. In the report, Vanguard broke down their analysis of retirement readiness based on 4 income percentiles: the 25th percentile, the 50th percentile, the 70th percentile, and the 95th percentile. And what they found is that workers in the 25th percentile of income tend to spend roughly 96% of their pre-retirement income in their retirement years. So there's only a small decline in spending. Those in the 50th percentile, their spending drops to about 83% of their pre-retirement income. Those in the 70th percentile, their spending drops to about 68% of their pre-retirement income. And those in the 95th percentile, they noticed the biggest drop, spending roughly 43% of their pre-retirement income in their golden years. So yes, we do tend to notice a decline in spending once people go into their retirement years, but the amount of the decline depends on what the income was prior to going into retirement. Plain and simple, if your income was on the lower end of the spectrum, you don't notice much of a drop. There might not be much in the way for expenses to be cut. Many of your expenses might already be essential expenses. So it is those lower income workers that really have to focus on replacing the vast majority of their income in order to sustain themselves in their golden years. And Social Security is a major factor when it comes to income in retirement. And Social Security does have a progressive structure in that lower income workers receive a greater replacement percentage of their income in retirement than higher income earners. But even with the progressive nature of Social Security, Vanguard found that it is the lower income earners who face the greatest burden of self-financing the majority of their retirement. Once we factor in Social Security, we tend to see that workers at all income levels will likely need to self-fund at least a portion of their income needs in retirement, because for most people, Social Security alone isn't enough to make ends meet. After we factor in Social Security, we need to factor in the private savings that people have to self-fund their retirement. And this is where the Vanguard report gets interesting. Once we combine both the median invested assets available for workers at these various income levels, as well as Social Security, we see that it is only those in the uppermost percentiles that actually are able to fully finance their retirement without any sort of shortfall. Workers in the 25th, 50th, and 70th percentile on average experience a shortfall between what their spending needs actually are versus what their current savings are. Vanguard even breaks it down a little bit further by these income percentiles as well as by age. And they found that it is the older generation, the baby boomers, who are at the most risk for experiencing the greatest income shortfalls in retirement. And this makes sense from the stance that many baby boomers are at or near retirement. Millennials and Gen X members still have time to make adjustments to their savings rates, or they can pause when they're stepping away from the workforce. They have time to make adjustments and maybe allow their money to compound a little bit longer, and they can make up a little bit more ground. In fact, millennials are in a slightly better position than Gen X members, and this just isn't due to their age and having more working years ahead of them. They've been helped in other ways, namely automatic enrollment. In automatic enrollment plans, 91% of eligible workers save for retirement. In voluntary enrollment plans, that figure is 28%. Clark and Young also estimates that 7 in 10 participants in defined contribution plans administered by Vanguard are saving at rates that would allow them to replace at least 65% of their pre-retirement income. Even a modest adjustment to target savings rates could boost that figure to 75%. Automatic enrollment on 401k plans is actually a fairly recent addition, so millennials were benefited by simply being bumped into these programs. A lot of Gen X members were not given the same benefit. And not only do plans have automatic enrollment, a lot of plans now have auto escalation features, forcing you to save a little bit more over time. And by 2025, all 401k plans will have an automatic enrollment feature, as well as an auto escalation feature. The big takeaway from this report is that many Americans are not saving enough. If they continue doing what they're doing and saving at their current rates, once they get to retirement, they will experience an income shortfall and they will have to cut back in their retirement lifestyle. So what can we do to improve our odds of having a well-funded retirement? Or what sort of roadblocks do we have to look out for? Well, there are 3 angles that we have to look at this from. Looking at things from the personal perspective, and this is where you have the most impact. The absolute most powerful thing you can do is increase your savings rate. Increase it 1%, increase it by $50, increase it whenever you can, and do that steadily over time, and that will have a profound impact on your ultimate financial goals. And I know this is the advice that people don't want to hear. They want some sort of get-rich-quick scheme, but literally it just comes down to cutting back your expenses, working to boost your income, and increasing your savings rate. That is how you reach your goals. Keep in mind that this report from Vanguard assumes the best case scenario for workers. It assumes that you work for a company that offers a 401k, that you continue to contribute to this 401k plan every single year throughout your entire working career without any breaks. It assumes that you don't cash out your 401k. Many workers actually don't have access to these plans, or they actually do make withdrawals from these plans. And if you do that, that can put your retirement at jeopardy. Next, you can consider delaying your retirement. This can actually help on 2 fronts. It allows your portfolio to compound an extra year or 2. It allows you to make a few more additions to it, but it also reduces the number of years that you need your portfolio to sustain you in retirement. The other suggestion made by Vanguard is that if you're a homeowner, you could utilize a reverse mortgage, or you could sell your home and downsize and relocate to a lower cost of living area. Now, whether or not these options appeal to you depends on your circumstances. It depends on your family situation, your friend situation, if these are actually options you would be willing to consider. And the factor beyond your control from a personal standpoint is market performance. Going forward, the markets could perform better than anticipated, and that would leave you with more money than you anticipated. However, the markets could also perform worse than anticipated, and that would leave you with less money than you had projected. So it's best when making your projections to do it from a conservative standpoint. From an employer standpoint, the best thing an employer can do is to offer an auto-enrollment feature and an auto-escalation feature, which will become mandatory as of 2025. Nudging people into making the right choices overwhelmingly helps them make the right choices. But it's worth keeping in mind that many workers have no access to a workplace plan. In the United States, that figure is about 50%. And if you're one of the millions of people who do not have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan, you have to take the burden of saving for your future on yourself. That means you have to go and open an IRA or a solo 401k or even just a plain and simple brokerage account and make sure to contribute to it, so once you get to retirement, you have some funds to fall back on. Our current Social Security program, as it currently stands, is not sustainable. Without reform, Social Security is set to run out of money in the relatively near future. Now, I do believe that reform will happen. It could come in the form of reduced payouts or delayed payouts, or likely a combination of the two. And likely it is the younger workers who are going to be the most affected. If you're already retired or near retirement, maybe these changes wouldn't affect you. But those in the Gen Z or millennials or even younger Gen X members, they should anticipate that Social Security as we know it will change. And mainly they should anticipate that they're going to have to finance more of their retirement on their own and less of a reliance on Social Security. And when reform does take place in this program, that is actually going to widen the gaps that we saw in those previous tables. And people are going to have to self-finance a greater percentage of their retirement. And it's going to be more strongly felt by those lower income earners. Many retirees heavily rely on Social Security to finance a great percentage of their retirement, but a better approach, if you have the time and discipline to do so, is to think as if Social Security is not going to be there and see if you can self-fund your entire retirement yourself. Because at that point, then if there is Social Security, it's just kind of icing on the cake, and no one gets to retirement and says, oh shoot, I saved too much. It's best to direct your efforts where you have the greatest control, and that's really going to be your personal savings rate and when you retire. And perhaps looking at your home, could you downsize at that time? Things that you can control are going to have the greatest impact. Now, can you have a well-funded retirement if you don't have a household income of $173,000? Of course you can. It really comes down to how you prepare for your retirement. Really, the biggest takeaway from this report is that most Americans are saving far too little, but that doesn't have to describe your circumstances. Do you think you're going to have a comfortable retirement? Leave your thoughts down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.